Your incredible patience. I recognize that many of you came down scheduled to be here at 6:30, and here it is, 7:30, on what I hope is still a nice spring day outside. And I just want to say thank you for being present and allowing us the time to work on several issues that we had that requires closed session material. So thank you very much for this. I'm going to have the council members do introductions, and we do have two people attending, Mayor Pro Tem and an at-large member attending virtually. So we'll start with Mr. Driggs, and we'll do introductions so you know who you're speaking with this evening.
Good evening, Ed Driggs, District 7.
Good evening, Victoria Watlington, District 3. Good to see you all tonight.
Tarek Bakari, District 6.
Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Larkin Eggleston, District 1.
Hi, I'm Vi Lyles, and I serve as mayor.
Marcus Jones, City Manager.
Greg Phipps at large.
Good evening, Renee Johnson, District 4.
Welcome, Dimple Ajmera at large.
Good evening, Matt Newton, District 5.
Good evening, Stephanie Kelly, City Clerk.
All right, thank you very much. Our Deputy City Attorney, please introduce yourself.
Lena James, Deputy City Attorney.
Okay. We begin our meetings with a moment. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, are they? Yes, I can't see them, but Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Julie Eitzel and serving at large.
Braxton Houston, at large.
Patrick Baker, City Attorney.
Okay, that's everyone. So we begin our meetings with a moment of inspiration so that we try to do our very best work for you. And tonight our invocation is going to be given by Ms. Watlington.
All righty, please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for allowing us to come before you again today as a community, as we think about how to best steward our resources and to make sure that we take care of even the least of these in our community so that everyone is able to live comfortably and with dignity in all work. We ask tonight for insight and for wisdom and for an ability to hear from our community and to have insight enough to be able to create a budget that works for our community so that we can continue to move forward in a way that works for as many of our residents as possible. We thank you for your guidance and we thank you for your love and your unity. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. You know, I am actually glad. Oh, the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's do that. That would be important. All right. If you'd stand, if you choose to, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So I want to say thank you because we have some really great things that are going on in our community, and we want to recognize a few people as well as some occasions that we should actually have a symbol for. So I am going to ask a few people to stand, and some of them will be groups and some will be individuals. So first, I'd like to recognize the Julius Chambers High School girls basketball team. Would you please stand? Okay. All right. Then I would like to recognize another great team. I was actually out at the groundbreaking of the reunion that they had at West Charlotte High School, the boys basketball team. Stand up. Did we wait too long for them? They had to go home and do homework? That's why? All right. And then we have a swim team from Myers Park High School. Would you please stand? We all know that there's no I in team, but often there might be a team member that provides great inspiration. And they're recognized for that. They're recognized for not only their athletic talent and skills, but they're recognized for what they bring and how they lift everyone up. So I would like to recognize several of the individual winners of our opportunity, our community, our school system's athletics. So I'm going to start off with West Mecklenburg, Sanu Jallo. Please stand. Stand up. Here. Myers Park, Mary Bonner Dalton. Stand up if you're here. All right. Kylie Wilhelm from Myers Park. Harding's Akayla Garrett. We're going to have a group. Here we go. Graham, and this is terrible. They know that I cannot pronounce these names. Okay. South Mecklenburg, Graham Godnecki. Thank you. Puffs Grace Rainey. Puffs Dean Traynor. Butlers, Tyson Harris. And Mallard Creek's Kahela Corey. We salute you for your efforts in your team sport, but more importantly, the way that you represent your community, your teammates, and the city. You're important to us. So what I want you to do is make sure that after you finish winning every gold medal that's possible for you, that you come back and run for mayor anytime that you want to, okay? Thank you very much. All right, wait a minute, I have one.
Mallard Creek, Camp Stinson.
Camp Stinson and Mallard Creek. Woo! So you get the spotlight all by yourself. That was intentional, believe me, right? Okay. Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would be remiss if we don't recognize the athletic director for Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, Erica Turner, is here with us as well. You did recognize, obviously, the Lions of West Charlotte and Chambers' respective basketball teams. I just want to thank them as well as all the individual sports winners. Athletics and education goes hand in hand. It builds character, leadership, development, and also brings a spotlight to the city of Charlotte. So we want to thank you again for all that you do in the classroom, on the courts, on the fields, to uplift the city of Charlotte. One of the things, Madam Mayor, that because I'm a girl dad and I followed high school athletics quite a bit, all the state championship games are on the other side of the state. Wouldn't it be nice for us to host a state championship game in Charlotte, Ms. Turner?
Okay, we're going to have to work on that. Okay?
We are.
All right, here we go. All right, thank you very much for being here. And again, I think I speak for everyone around this dais. We're very proud of you. Very, very proud of you. So now we're going to go to recognize some of the occasions that are taking place in our community now. And I'd like to ask Mr. Bakari if he would read the proclamation for the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence Week. Mr. Bakari?
And as I do that, would Eric Locker and former District 7 Council Member Warren Cooksey come on down to accept this. And by the way, kids, we're all very proud of you. Remember, there's no I in team, swimming, or wrestling.
I'm not sure I got that. Okay.
I got Marcus Jones on that. He's like, look at that.
All right, independence.
Okay, here we go.
All right, Eric and...
This is my 5th year getting to read this proclamation. I love it so much. It's such an honor to be able to do this. Whereas on May 19th, 1775, Charlottetown's founder, Colonel Thomas Polk, called for a convention of the Mecklenburg County militia leaders to be held in Charlotte. Those 26 men, upon hearing of the battles of Lexington and Concord, unanimously adopted resolutions to declare themselves a free and independent people in a document that became known as the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence, also known as the MECDEC. And on May 20th, 1775, Colonel Polk read the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence to an assembled citizens at the county courthouse. And whereas on May 31st, 1775, members of the Mecklenburg Committee of Safety adopted 20 additional resolutions, which came to be known as the Mecklenburg Resolves. And whereas a local tavern owner named Captain James Jack was called upon to deliver the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence and Mecklenburg Resolves to North Carolina's delegates at the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia. And whereas Captain Jack delivered the MECDEC, telling the delegates, "Gentlemen, you may debate here about reconciliation and memorialize your king, but bear in mind, Mecklenburg owes no allegiance to and is separated from the crown of Great Britain forever." And whereas the state of North Carolina has chosen to recognize the significance of the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence by placing the date of its signing, May 20th, 1775, upon our state flag and Great Seal. And whereas this May 20th, 2022 is the 247th anniversary of the MECDEC. Now, therefore, she, Vi Alexander Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte, and George Dunlap, Chair of the Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim May 20th through 24th, 2022 as Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence Week. Sorry.
Done one of these before.
I like your tie.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Don't do drugs.
Our next day of proclamation will be read by Councilmember Newton.
How do you follow that? Huh?
Following that. Good luck, Councilmember
I'll
Newton.
follow that. I want to start just by recognizing Fonda Bryant, and I don't know if it's appropriate to ask Fonda to come down. If you would, I mean, you're up there pretty high, Fonda, but if you would hazard the steps there, that'd be fantastic. I just wanted to recognize Ms. Bryant for all of her efforts and hard work in raising mental health and suicide prevention awareness in our city and our community. She has worked tirelessly for years to have mental health and suicide prevention placards installed in and atop numerous buildings here downtown to save lives. If you've noticed the buildings, as well as the Bank of America Stadium being lit up on May 1st in recognition of Suicide Awareness Month, it was because of her. And she just recently led a walk of over 21 miles to raise awareness as well. That's just the tip of the iceberg, frankly, and I just wanted to take this moment to thank you for all of your work and all of your efforts over the many years to address the important issue of suicide prevention as well as mental health awareness in our community, the public health issue that it is. So, having said that, on to the proclamation. Whereas there is a proven connection between good mental health and overall personal health, good mental health is critical to the well-being of our families, communities, schools, and businesses. And whereas a mental health condition affects almost every family in America, and people with a mental health condition recover if given the necessary services and support in their communities. And whereas people with a mental health condition make important contributions to our families and our communities. And whereas 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 5 children have a mental health condition, by the time a youth is 14 years old, 50% of them are dealing with a mental health condition, and by 24 years old, 75% are dealing with a mental health condition. And whereas stigma, shame, and fear of discrimination keep many who would benefit from mental health services from seeking help, mental health is health and doesn't discriminate no matter the background, education, age, race, gender, or finances. Greater public awareness about mental health can change negative attitudes and behaviors toward people with mental health conditions. And whereas citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, reducing stigma and discrimination, and promoting appropriate and accessible services for all people with a mental health condition, recovery is possible. Now, therefore, our illustrious Mayor, Vi Alexander Lyles, do hereby proclaim May 2022 as Mental Health Awareness Month in Charlotte and commend its observance to all citizens.
Thank you. Ms. Bryant? No. Go to the podium. Mr. Newton can walk. You don't have to.
Oh.
Come on.
Yes, ma'am.
You come on up to the podium. No, to speak. Ms. Bryant has signed up to speak, but because she's down here, instead of having her come down those steps twice, gentlemen, I'd like to ask her to speak now. Thank you.
Thank y'all guys for giving me this opportunity. If you didn't know my story, would you know that I was diagnosed with clinical depression after a suicide attempt 27 years ago? On Valentine's Day, 1995, a day of love, I had a plan to kill myself. I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. I was in pain from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. However, before I did that, I reached out to a hero, my Aunt Spanky, who went into action like a superhero and saved my life. Today, I turn around and help others like me, but I can't do it alone. I need everyone's help. Think about how little effort it takes to brush your teeth. For many of you, not much at all. But for me and millions who deal with depression, the #1 debilitating disease in the world, it can take all the energy we have to brush our teeth, comb our hair, or take a shower. But to society, we look perfectly healthy. Mental health has no face and does not discriminate. A mental health condition doesn't care if you're famous, a student athlete, a doctor, teacher, attorney, politician, judge, student, or everyday person. With 1 out of 5 adults and 1 out of 5 children having a mental health condition, it is any and everyone. No one is immune. 40 million Americans deal with anxiety, and 17.3 Americans deal with depression. Daily, I see mental health on display in the high school where I work. Some days, I leave the school with a heavy sadness because I'm doing all I can, and still it isn't enough. Students coming to me talking about needing help for their mental health. Early detection is the key when it comes to our mental health. If we don't have mentally healthy youth, we won't have mentally healthy adults, and I should know, I wasn't always mentally healthy. A mental health condition can rob you of your joy, your future, your freedom, and even your life. We need to do better by those who are dealing with a mental health condition. The stigma that surrounds mental health is why people don't get help. No one likes to be labeled crazy, nuts, psycho, cray-cray, or violent. Just like you didn't know I have a mental health condition, you never know who is standing, sitting, or working beside you that is struggling. A smile can hide a lot of pain. Mental health is health. Mental health is treatable. Recovery is possible. We who have a mental health condition deserve the same empathy, compassion, and kindness as a person with a physical condition, because after all, mental health is physical health. Mental health isn't a sign of weakness. It takes real strength to get the help you need. If you are struggling, please know there is help. You're not alone. Thank you.
All right, now I would like to recognize Councilmember Dimple Ajmera.
Are you all going to leave?
Homework, they got AP exams.
Oh, good luck with the exam.
Yeah, I bet they're sorry about the AP exams, actually.
Start now. Okay, our next resolution is for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So the members of the community, please come down while I read this proclamation. For decades, each year, Americans observe Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in May by celebrating the diverse histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens, residents, and immigrants of this region. And whereas in 1978, a joint congressional resolution established Asian Pacific American Heritage Week, the month of May was chosen with two important milestones: the arrival in the United States of the first Japanese immigrants on May 7, 1843, and contributions of Chinese workers to the building of Transcontinental Railroad, completed May 10, 1869. And whereas in 1992, Congress expanded the observance to a month-long celebration that is known as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And whereas in 1997, in a U.S. Office of Management and Budget, the Asian or Pacific Islander racial category was separated into two categories: Asian and Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. And whereas community organized celebration of the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Charlotte began in 2000 with the Asian Festival and continues every year, except 2020 to this day. And whereas, according to the Office of the U.S. Census, Mecklenburg County is home to 60,000 plus Asian American residents, and the city of Charlotte recognizes the extraordinary contributions by this community of immigrants, residents, and citizens of Asian American origin. Now, therefore, our mayor, Vi Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Thank you.
Who's going to accept the award?
I guess the whole community.
Good to see you. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you. Good to see you.
Great day. Hey, good job. Congratulations. Congratulations. There we go. There we go. Way to go. You guys keep it up. Keep it up. Some of that. Oh.
Hey, lady. Good to see you.
Thank you. All right, girls, come on, knock it off.
There you go. See right there. Boom. Bang.
Thank you so much.
Finger shaking. There we go.
Thank you. You are fantastic.
See you right there. Boom.
I'm
Sir, boom.
proud. I mean, you guys make us proud. Thank you.
See you.
All right, and so now we have our final proclamation for today's meeting. This one's very close to home. It is a proclamation being presented to several of our team members, the Charlotte team members today. And I would like to begin with, whereas public work professionals focus on infrastructure, emergency management, and services that are important to sustainable and resilient communities like ours. Whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and service could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are federally mandated first responders and the engineers, managers, employees at all levels in our government and our private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, and treatment, and solid waste systems. Whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens and civic leaders and children in Charlotte to gain knowledge and maintain ongoing interest in understanding the importance of public works, first responders, and all of those that serve our community. Whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and the Canadian Public Works Association, now therefore I, Vi Alexander Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte, proclaim May 15th through the 21st as National Public Works Week. Now, why is this important? It's because 70% of our workers are in public works, I believe, something like that, if not 75% or more. What they do makes it possible for all of us to do what we choose to do as well. And it's very important to know that Charlotte will be hosting the 2022 American Public Works Association Expo Conference in August. The conference brings thousands of people from all over the world, and they provide valuable learning opportunities that address current issues in public works, as well as addressing the challenges that we have. We're looking forward to welcoming this conference to our city, and we want to acknowledge the people in our city that make this conference possible. So Phil Rieger, Director of General Services, Angela Charles, Director of Charlotte Water, Mike Davis, Deputy Director of General Services, Rodney Jameson, Director of Solid Waste Services, Ellen Price, Deputy Director of Solid Waste Services, Eric De La Pena, Deputy Director of Solid Waste Services, Liz Babson, Director of Transportation, and Jennifer Smith, our city's engineer. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for inviting all of the people that do this work to our city, and I hope you have the best conference ever. Thank you. All you guys up there, please. All you guys, part of it. You guys stand up, too. Really, all of you work to make it possible. Thank you. Okay. Again, I thank you for your patience. We're now going to go into our public forum, and I'd like to recognize J.D. Williams to come down and speak to us. Mr. Williams, and then could I have Loretta Barrett come down on this side of the podium when Mr. Williams is coming down. Ms. Barrett, is Ms. Barrett here? If Ms. Barrett is not, she's going to be virtual. So Ms. Barrett's going to come on virtual after Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm a 20-year veteran with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and just wanted to address the issue and ask the City Council's assistance with trying to get what we feel is an unfair policy change. As you can see, I have a full facial hair and a beard. That's because I suffer from a condition known as pseudofolliculitis barbae, which is razor bumps, which affects a lot of African-American men. We are here to ask for your assistance in changing the current grooming policy as it relates to the shaving requirements for male officers. I recently sent each one of you an email containing photos of officers that suffer from the skin condition known as pseudofolliculitis barbae, or razor bumps, which affects roughly 60 to 70% of black men. This means that over half of the black officers that serve on CMPD suffers from this in varying degrees. The most severe leaves men with permanent scarring and discoloration of the skin. Our department's current policy requires that our officers shave and that we are required to obtain a shave accommodation from the Americans with Disability Act. The problem with the ADA accommodation is that it subjects officers to unfair treatment, ridicule, in some cases harassment, and blatant disrespect. As the department makes it very clear its disdain for the accommodation and the officers that use them. For years, the shave policy has been a source of dissension within our ranks and opens the door for discriminatory behavior on the part of officers, supervisors, and in some cases, command staff, who make it very known that they dislike the accommodation. This issue has been allowed to fester and has caused racial microaggressions to permeate within our ranks. Black officers feel targeted and unsupported, while my white brothers in the force and supervisors feel that we are receiving unfair privileges. Because CMPD has made no effort to educate and inform supervisors and command about the condition and does nothing to encourage offering assistance. It's like wearing a scarlet letter on our faces. And the solution is simple. Change the shave regulations to allow all officers the freedom to wear well-groomed professional facial hair while on duty, so that all officers are on the same playing field without one group being alienated from another. History has taught us that it is never a good thing to separate people based upon physical differences. Amending the policy would relieve black officers from alienation while giving other officers the freedom to choose. Our department has claims that the not changing the shave policy is due to the gas mask that we are issued. The gas mask must seal around the face and jawline, and hair may impede this seal, but so does eyeglasses. The stem of eyeglasses breaks the seal of the mask, and the user must remove them to fit the mask properly. After removing their glasses,
Mr. Williams, I'm going to let you finish that statement. We have 3 minutes on this, and I failed to say that to you. But we also have gotten the information that you've sent to us, and I believe that the chief is going to begin to review this, and he will be getting back to you.
okay then.
Okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
All right, so our next speaker is Charlene Graves. Oh, Ms. Graves, are you here? And then we will be followed by Evan Lee, who will be virtual with us. Graves, thank you for being here.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Charlene Graves, and I live at 6057 Treetop Court, 28212. My cross streets are Redmond and Albemarle Roads. I am a prospective homeowner and resident of East Charlotte, not representing any organization. I would like to remind some and familiarize others with the influx of gaming and fish centers that have opened over a 2.3-mile area of my neighborhood. These businesses have begun to saturate this stretch from exit 247 East to W.T. Harris. I was unable to find current research pertaining to the rules governing the placement of these facilities throughout the city. It appears that very few of the 9 mentioned centers in my pictorial document are listed when searching for gaming sites in Charlotte. I visited the site, NC Department of Public Safety, where I was directed to Article 37, which took me to a page not found. This article, if it exists, dealt with lotteries, gaming, bingo, and raffles. Axios Charlotte, formerly the Charlotte Agenda, provided the most up-to-date information on gaming in Charlotte. The article entitled Gaming Now, dated February 2nd, 2022, was most useful. This article states that Charlotte authorities don't know how many of these centers actually exist. Axios did an analysis which exposed more than 30 citywide. If there are 9 within a 2.3-mile strip in my neighborhood, then they are suggesting that the other 21 must be located in Midwood Plaza, Nodar, Ballantyne, Dilworth, the 4th Ward, Steel Creek, or Carswell. Or are they? Axios suggests that these gaming centers are located in Charlotte's low-income communities. It is suggested that communities without arcades have an average household income of $75,000 plus. The one sentence included in this article that really stands out to me is, quote, as the amount of arcades in a census area increases, the typical household earnings mainly include one arcade reduced to $42,000. I say I only have a few more seconds, so I'll get to this. Ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, 1, how many more of these centers are you going to allow in my section of Albemarle Road corridor? Are these centers legal or illegal? Are you going to continue to allow every empty building along our section of Albemarle corridor become a gaming or fish center? Are you going to allow the residents of my neighborhood to coexist with these centers that continue to lower our quality of life just by their mere existence? 1, what financial gains are we, my neighborhood, reaping from their existence? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Graves.
Graves, thank you. We will ask the staff to do some research, and you will get a call back, okay? Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. So our next speaker is Evan Lee, virtual. Is Ms. Lee? All right.
Hello.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Then I will begin now. Greetings to the Charlotte City Council. We are Charlotte Lions School's ACE Action Team. I'm Evan Lee, and I'm joined by Lynn Zhao, Tyler Haruchi, Laura Han, Nisa Fadke, David Tan, and Evie Linker. For me, as well as approximately 200,000 children of Charlotte, our futures are in grave danger. Climate change is set to cause catastrophic effects on the entirety of North Carolina, including an increase in days that are so hot that they could potentially harm human life, a 50% increase in drought risks for North Carolina, and severely increased chances of wildfires across the nation. This is especially dangerous as in North Carolina, more than 50% of our people live in areas with increased risks for wildfires. With rising sea levels, many of North Carolina's beautiful beaches will be covered in water. It is estimated that the Outer Banks, a state symbol, will completely disappear in the next 50 to 100 years, and many of our beaches will follow suit. The rising sea levels, increasing humidity, and warming climate here in North Carolina provide the perfect environment for mosquitoes to survive, specifically the yellow fever and Anopheline mosquitoes. Between them, these mosquitoes are responsible for the spread of many deadly diseases, such as Zika fever, the West Nile virus, and even malaria. Additionally, the plastic pollution that plagues our waterways, parks, and streets through runoff and river streams will make it into the ocean. Not only does this tarnish the natural beauty of our treasured shores, but it also poses several health concerns. If not properly disposed of, this plastic can break down into smaller pieces called microplastics, which are consumed by fish and other marine animals. Once we consume the fish, the plastics invade our bodies, staying there almost permanently, causing cell death and allergic reactions. These plastics have been found in almost every type of marine animal and will remain in our food chains for centuries, getting worse if we don't do something now. So how can we combat climate change in our Charlotte community? There are many things that we can do, whether that be placing higher emphasis on education about global warming in schools or building more green zones in Charlotte. However, the first step is to recognize that climate change is an imminent problem and that right now we aren't doing enough to slow it down. We must declare a climate emergency. These declarations allow you, the officials, to access new resources and to commit to climate action plans and efforts, setting a precedent for others. It also sets cultural standards of prioritizing the climate crisis and a readiness to tackle it. It proves to both the state and federal governments that the people are ready for bold climate action. Your climate emergency action pressures the state and federal levels to join the momentum and move forward with climate actions. We have the opportunity to lead the rest of the state on how to address the climate crisis. I care about climate change because I have to live in whatever future there may be, and I will fight to make that future survivable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final speaker for our public forum is Loretta Barrett. Ms. Barrett is virtual. She is now, no. Okay, so that is the end of our public forum. Now our next item on our agenda is the public hearings. We have several additional public hearings tonight, and we'll begin with our budget public hearing, which is agenda item number 8. And we're having a public hearing on the manager's recommended fiscal year 2023 operating budget and fiscal years 2023-2027 capital investment plan. I hope that most of you had an opportunity to pick up the bulletin that was out in the hallway on the way in so that you have a summary. And so I'm going to call down 2 speakers at a time if they are in virtual or in person, and we'll try to move through this. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to address the council. And our first speaker is Juan Irvin, and then Cass Otley, who is in person. Mr. Irvin is virtual. So if Ms. Otley comes down first, we'll start with her, and then we'll go to Mr. Irvin. Or Uven. If Mr. Uven. All right. Good afternoon, Ms. Otley.
Good afternoon. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Manager, and City Council members. My name is Cass Otley. I'm the project staff organizer for Charlotte City Workers Union UE 150. This evening, I would like to thank the members of the Charlotte City Workers Union UE 150 and the city workers that met with the city manager to help create the budget proposal for city workers with city workers' needs in mind. I would like to thank council members Dimple Ashmere, Braxton Winston, Matt Newton, Malcolm Graham, and Victoria Watlington for meeting with city workers to better understand their concerns. And certainly, lastly but not least, I would like to thank Marcus Jones, the city manager, for having an open door and meeting with the union members and city workers to really listen to the needs of the workers and to come up with solutions. And while this budget won't fix everything, it is definitely a step in the right direction. We look forward to working with you in the future to close the wealth gap in Charlotte so that all Charlotteans can live and thrive in the city that they work in. And also, Charlotte can set a new standard for city worker pay and really be the queen city that we all know that it can be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is Mr. Uven on, Ms. Jackson? All right, we will go to our next in-person speaker, Nichelle Dunlap Thompson. Nichelle Dunlap Thompson. Are you here? All right. Then our next person and speaker is Mike Ross. Mr. Ross? And then Mr. Ross would be followed by Mr. Brown, Craig Brown. Okay. All right. Mr. Ross, thank you.
Thank you for having me today, this evening. My name is Michael Ross. I am a city worker with Charlotte Water. I would like to thank the following people: Marcus Jones, Brent Cagle, if I said that right, Sheila Simpson and her assistant, excuse me for not knowing the name, and also the budget director. I can't remember her name either, please forgive me for that.
That's okay, we know who he is.
But I would like to say thank you for having an open door, for listening to us, sitting down with us over the past few months, listening to what we said, and taking a step forward. We have taken a big step forward with this budget, and we just ask that now that we keep the doors open so we can keep following up with this right here, this budget. For the city council members, I ask each and every one of you to look at this budget and take the same steps that Marcus and his team has taken and vote yes on this budget. We also want to tell you that we're here to help you with your campaigns. Also, we are going to remember each and every one of you who met with us over the past few months when we go into the voting booth. So each and every one of us vote, and we believe in you, and we want you to stay where you are. Keep working for us, and we'll keep working for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Brown.
Madam Mayor, esteemed council members, my man. Done good. Like I always tell you, the work's just beginning. We got a lot of work ahead of us because we can solve one issue and there's many other issues to be put on the table. But you're the right man for the job, as all my comrades said just now. Thank you for having an open door. Thank you for having a listening ear. It means a whole lot to the city workers to have someone that listens to us. Yes. I really do. These are hard times. These are very hard times. And for us to be able to push through and get through what we want means a whole lot. It goes a long way. Thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, is Ms. Forney here? Antigua Forney? Ms. Forney? Mr. I'm sorry, they gave it to me as a Ms., so yeah, I'm sorry. You know, it wasn't about you. It was just like I'm reading what's on the script here. Thank you for coming down.
How y'all doing tonight, City Council? I'm here, you know, my comrades are here, and we know this is a big year. We know Charlotte is growing, and budget got to grow. We got to grow together. We got to fight together. We got to continue to fight. You know, once the ball get rolling, we got to keep the ball rolling. This budget is big because it's, you know, this budget is what helps our families. It what helps us eat. It's, you know, we got the breadwinners. Some of us, you know, have to bring home, you know, the pot. And Charlotte is growing, and some, you know, people come here, you know, for the attractions and the amenities. And I hope that you guys can see that and just push this budget through. As workers, we work very hard, very, very hard. You know, you got police and fire that work hard. We work just as hard, and I hope you guys can see that. I thank you guys for working together to create this budget and keep pushing a bigger budget that will affect us, that will help us get to where we need to be in the city of Charlotte to help us live, so there will be no more suffering for the city workers. And come to live comfortable, just as everyone else is moving in, we can move in as well. And this round one. You know, there's going to be another round, another round, another round. But like I say, we got to be champions in the fight. You know, you can win one game, but a champion, going to keep winning. So I thank you guys for getting this budget together, and let's push this budget through, and let's all be champions and keep pushing and be champions in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Forney. Our next speaker is Mr. Davis, followed by Mr. Harris. Come on down. Both of you feel free to come on down. Derek Davis and Dominique Harris.
I'd like to thank the city manager and the city council for the increase to the city workers in the budget. We ask that you will continue the process of approving the proposed budget. I would like to reiterate the message from my last appearance before the city council, which is UE 150, right for access to city departments. We request access to new employee orientation in order to be visible and accessible to serve employees. The same way our national government have 3 branches of government to bring balance to power, I feel locally the right to organize and the space to assemble is the missing branch between the city leaders and upper management in the city departments. Our whole democratic process is built on representation. The voting process was installed in order to give representation because the forefathers of this Constitution knew that the rights would not come without representation. We are asking for the right for UE 150 to give representation for the city workers. To be denied from that from the private sector would be wrong, but to be denied that from a municipality would be a crying shame and totally un-American. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Come on down.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? I'm Dominic Harris, UE 150 Charlotte Chapter President, also a Valve Crew Chief 1 in Huntersville, Zone 1 for Charlotte Water. I'd like to first thank my guys up here. I'd like to thank all the workers for the city of Charlotte, because without them, we wouldn't be able to make any of this possible. So I give a hand to them. Second of all, I'd like to thank the guy that had the bright idea to actually meet with workers and figure out what they wanted, Marcus Jones. That was pretty smart move. I'd like to thank the members of City Council that chose to sit down to actually listen with us and continue that ball moving. I'd like to thank everybody that knows that city workers deserve to live in the city that they work in. As we continue to speak, as we continue to build our relationships, as we continue to move forward, I hope that we're able to do that in solidarity with one another, hand in hand, fist in fist, as we fight this fight. One thing I also like to do is to thank everybody that had a hand in the budget process. That includes the department directors for what they did. I don't know exactly what all the moves they made, but I'm sure they did some things. You know what I'm saying? So I'd like to thank the Queens team for their input, and just everybody just for doing their part to make this budget what it is. Hourly wage workers deserved it for a long time. It's finally here. It's finally making sense. And as we continue to talk, it's going to make more sense as we go down the line. All right, so appreciate y'all for listening.
Mr. Mr. Harris, I don't know how you conduct your meetings, but you certainly got a big, strong cheerleading squad over there. You know? Thank you. Thank you so much. Now we're going to ask, we have two podiums down here. I'd like to ask Mitchell Edwards and Jerome Wagner. If you come down the steps and take either one of the podiums would be great. And we'll follow Mr. Edwards and Mr. Wagner with Lawrence Tolliver and Angela Gray. All right? You have 2 minutes each. And if you'll just say your name so that we'll know who's whom.
I'm Mitchell Edwards.
Hello.
Hi, good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. My name is Mitchell Edwards. I am with the NAACP. And first, I'd like to thank the City Council for the $4.5 million investment in city building sustainability, the $1.5 million investment in electric supply locations, and providing 55 fully electric vehicles to the city's fleet, and for the first all-electric fire station. However, as a city, I believe we can do more by expanding the budget for the workforce development to add green workforce development, and this would be focusing on areas of Black and brown communities, also in the corridors of opportunities. And I feel that we could use the $100 million that was proposed for the corridors of opportunities to put aside a portion for the budget for green workforce development. Also to establish a budget for programs like AgCast, which train individuals to retrofit AC units to be more sustainable. Also to make use of the $50 million recommendation for affordable housing to make the housing green. Examples of this would be solar panel roofing, green sustainable insulation, and also stipulating green construction practices for the contractors that use the developer. Also, a portion of the $29 million budget that's recommended to go into neighborhoods could also use to integrate this green affordable housing into more established areas through uses of quadplexes and duplexes. Also, we could use a portion of the $1.5 million for workforce development, coupled with the $16 million from the ARPA Tranche 2 investment to connect people to pathways to direct employment through ICAS, like I mentioned, also CPCC's Tesla Start program, also their hybrid automotive program, and also like the city of Orlando created their first green print pilot program.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. All right, Mr. Wagner? And I had Ms. Gray as being in person, but she is virtual. Mr. Wagner, please.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Jerome Wagner. I'm the lead organizer for 350 Charlotte. I'm also the chairperson of the CIAP Accountability Committee. I start by bringing to mind the indigenous peoples who lived here sustainably for millennia. I also bring to mind the enslaved Africans and African Americans whose unpaid and coerced labor built wealth that we still enjoy today. I'm thankful for the progress that the city has made thus far in the areas of sustainability and resiliency. I especially thank Sustainability Officer Sarah Hazel and her staff for leading that progress. Back in 2018, this council adopted the Sustainability Resolution, which set the goal of carbon-free municipal operations by 2030. The urgency of this lofty goal has been amplified by recent pronouncements from the UN's IPCC. I suggest that the planned funding is geared towards improvements only. In my view, the budget is not geared to attainment of the 2030 goal. This is not a budget to actualize generational change sought by the resolution. In the focused area of transportation, the 2030 goal envisions replacement of all the city's fossil-fueled vehicles with EVs. My crude estimate of the funding needed to convert about 300 CATS buses and thousands of other vehicles is on the order of $400 million. The $20 million budgeted by CATS for 16 BEVs in 2023 is significant, but only the tip of the transportation iceberg. As we know, electrification of vehicles has the added benefit of improving air quality in stressed communities. Will Charlotte be as successful as its peer cities in the energy transition? Will the city's operations be carbon-free in 2030? I forecast that they will not be if funding remains at current levels. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Lawrence Tolliver, Mr. Tolliver, and Ms. Gray, Angela Gray, virtual. I don't see Ms. Jackson.
Mayor Lyles and members of council and all
Good
those
to
assembled.
see you again, Lawrence.
It's an opportunity that I wouldn't pass up. I just want to tell you that I do acknowledge that the city government's goal is extremely ambitious to be carbon-free in its operations by 2030. I compliment you on setting such an ambitious goal. I also compliment you on the broad, though scattered, resilient and sustainable initiatives represented in the budget. I urge you to quit hiding your light under a bushel, meaning it would be nice if all of the CAP-funded initiatives were somehow in one place. We have a hard time, finding all of the initiatives that you've supported. I encourage city government to exercise greater leadership in combating global warming. No one, certainly not Charlotte's most prominent corporations, no one is exercising the leadership you are. Our leading corporations appear to be positioning themselves to obstruct widespread adoption of residential solar paneling. And they appear to be positioning themselves to continue to invest in more fossil fuel infrastructure. I wonder if they expect government to bail them out when those things stop working. I encourage you to lead by divesting all city funds from all fossil fuel-related investments. I encourage you to educate educational institutions to also divest of fossil fuel investments.
I know you're from my hometown, so you have to stop. Your 2 minutes are up. Good to see you. So our next speaker, and Ms. Gray?
Yes.
All right, we can hear you. I'm not sure if you're visible on the screen, but could you go ahead? You have 2 minutes.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Angela Gray, and I am the founder and chairman of Rick's Market Foundation, an organization that is working to open Charlotte's first full-service nonprofit grocery store. Additionally, I am a member of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Climate Leaders and serve on its steering committee. I would like to thank all of those that worked so hard to compile the proposed fiscal 2023 balanced budget. I understand that the need is great and continues to grow with the number of residents, which makes the thoughtful consideration of where to apply the funds that much more important. Both organizations that I represent today are linked by the importance of ensuring a healthy, thriving environment for generations to come. I applaud the council on its continued support of the Sustainability Energy Action Plan, also known as CAP, and sustainability efforts through its financial backing of things including but not limited to transportation, protection of the tree canopy, and building improvements. However, I strongly encourage that the efforts that affect our food system are not overlooked. We can and must ensure that locally grown foods are available and affordable to everyone, and that the equipment from transportation to storage does no harm to the environment. The city must Also invest in the implementation of food waste reduction initiatives. I look forward to the city leading on these initiatives and creating opportunities for its citizens to follow. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you very much for the work that you're doing. So our next speaker is Jody Yan, and followed by Leon Ammon. And both of you are, is Mr. Ammon in person?
No, Mayor, I sent you that note.
Okay, he will be virtual, so, no, he is not speaking tonight. I'm sorry, I made a note in the wrong place, I think. His mom is speaking. Tina Castanos?
Castanos.
All right, you're following Ms. Shine. I'm sorry I had your son's name signed up, and the clerk says that subbing. All right. Please, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jody Yan, and I'm here to speak to you about SEAP, also known as the Strategic Energy Action Plan, and specifically I'd like to speak about the inadequate investment towards sustainability in our future. I'm very grateful for the current investment in sustainability, but I believe it's not enough. I am 16 years old, and I think I speak for a lot of people my age when I say we're frustrated with the lack of urgency by the city when it comes to environmental issues. We've learned throughout our lives that our generation and those that follow will bear the brunt of consequences that come from global warming. And as such, we've become very good at recycling, composting, and finding ways to reduce our personal carbon footprint and do our part, however extremely minuscule that may be. Governments have the ability to have so much more of an impact than any individual person, and yet it feels like this city does not share my generation's sense of urgency when it comes to the environment. Furthermore, fighting climate change is not just about distant, intangible goals, such as ridding the entire ocean of plastic or saving the polar bears. Although those are very important causes, fighting climate change is also about improving local everyday lives. Environmental and sustainability issues are so deeply entwined with other pressing social issues in Charlotte. For example, investing in more electric transit eliminates diesel and carbon dioxide fumes, therefore reducing health issues. Reduction of household energy burdens helps with economic equity and wealth growth. And in addition, heat mitigation in the form of more trees, green spaces, gardens, and shade structures will reduce tensions and, by extension, CMPD engagement and need. With all that said, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Katasanos, followed by a virtual Jessica Finkel.
Tina Katsanos, NAACP, Climate Reality, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Climate Leaders. Climate change will not happen in 2030, 2040, nor 2050. It is already here. We are currently living in a post-climate change world where people are suffering and dying because of climate change impacts. According to the World Economic Forum, an estimated 20 million people a year are currently being displaced because of extreme flooding, drought, sea level rise, extreme temperatures, and super wildfires. Last summer, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued an assessment report. UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres summarized the findings as a code red for humanity and stated that the time for diplomatic niceties has passed. A second document was released in February, which states that we have reached tipping points across the globe where climate change is now irreversible and some places are now beyond adaptation. The report states that 40% of the world's population is highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. The reports reiterate the urgency of taking action now if we hope to escape the future worst scenarios. The current budget does not reflect the urgency of the moment. The current tool devised by the City of Charlotte to mitigate climate change is the SEAP. This budget does not adequately fund this plan. Investing in public safety should be the highest priority, but spending 40.5% of the budget on the police department is not the way to accomplish this. Public safety should be prioritized through the lens of climate change mitigation and resilience. There is nothing in the budget for green workforce development. This is our moment to fund green workforce development, which can promote economic opportunities to historically underserved demographics, the same communities of people that contribute the least to the climate crisis but shoulder the greatest burdens. This budget does not reflect this type of equity, and again, does not reflect the urgency of the moment. We need a climate budget, not a police budget. Please revise accordingly. And we all support the city workers. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Jessica Finkel will be virtual, as well as Alina Shepard. Are they on, Ms. Jackson? All right. Ms. Finkel?
Yes. Hi. Thank you all for coming, for your time today. My name is Jessica Finkel, and I volunteer as a co-coordinator with the Charlotte Hub of the Sunrise Movement and as a secretary for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg NAACP. And looking at the budget for this coming year, it seems that almost nothing is going towards sustainability and the CF plan, and frankly, that boggles my mind at this point. It's almost insulting to my generation and generations to come, and makes a mockery of the 2030 and 2050 goals. I wish I could be excited by these goals, but with 2030 just a few short years away, the light at the end of the tunnel is continuing to get further away. You're essentially saying to the young people in the audience and watching and around Charlotte that your life is worth less than 1% of what the city wants to pay for, and you're putting a price tag on our lives. And while every cent is a positive cent, we're here both virtually and in person to ask for more. My wedding is in 12 days, and I wish I didn't have to be here talking tonight, yet here we are. My request now is to not just stop at offering to build one electric firehouse and not limit the city to one green benefit here and there, but to become the example for cities around the country and around the globe for what energy efficiency can look like. Reinforcing these goals allows us to keep frontline communities at the center of these conversations. Investments in public transit, bikeability, and walkability will spur economic development, and we can incentivize companies to come here who will provide green jobs and create green infrastructure that will help our job market and economy for decades to come. Investments like the one that the NAACP puts forward that my colleague Mitchell discussed earlier will educate a new workforce on how to build energy-efficient communities and protect our lower-income neighbors. There are so many things our city can do to reduce heat islands, take cars off the road, and help low-income communities. And I'm sure, as you've heard from tonight, my colleagues have gone over them and will continue to go over them, and they are fantastic opportunities for our city. I mean, do you know how many young people you get out to vote if you could prove to them that their future matters to you? I mean, Dimple does it all the time with her outspoken work for the environment, and you all have less than a week to get it on your agenda for anybody running for office. Climate change is happening now.
Ms. Finkel, your time is up. If you'd like to send us the remaining parts or a copy of your remarks to the clerk's office, we'll make sure they're included in the public record. Our next speaker is Alina Shepard. Ms. Shepard, you're also virtual.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, staff. Good evening, City Council, Mayor, and staff. My name is Alina Shepard. I'm a program manager with Sustain Charlotte. We are a nonprofit organization that advocates for sustainable land use and transportation choices. We've been following the development of the fiscal year 2023 budget, and tonight I want to voice strong support for the record high amount of proposed funding for bike and pedestrian infrastructure improvements. Given Charlotte's rapid population growth and the need for all the people to safely travel regardless of the mode they use, we think it's critical that the budget includes funding for sustainable transportation modes. As you know, the budget includes $50 million for sidewalks, which is more than 3 times the amount in the 2020 bond. The recommended budget also allocated $4 million to fund Vision Zero, a doubling of 2020 bond. As a member of the city's Vision Zero task force and a strong advocate for adoption of a citywide Vision Zero goal 4 years ago, Sustain Charlotte is especially excited to see a recommendation of an additional $13.1 million in bond capacity to be applied to Vision Zero investments to help the city make progress toward its goal of ending traffic fatalities and severe injuries by 2030. We're also very excited to see the recommended $8 million to be spent on the bicycle program. For most families, transportation and housing are 2 major expenses for the household. People of all income levels deserve a safe and dignified place to live. We support the budget recommendation for affordable housing and efforts to reduce displacement risks. We fully support the proposed $7.1 million investments in the CAP in fiscal year 2023 so that the city can reach its 2030 and 2050 climate goals. As fast, frequent, and reliable CATS bus network will be a powerful tool to shift more residents out of their cars. Please support funding for CATS operations and envision my rights study and implementation to make this a reality. In closing, I want to challenge City Council to become champion of mobility and support a dedicated revenue source to build a transformational mobility network so that people can walk, bike, ride transit, and use greenways in their daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the work that Sustain Charlotte does to help further those goals. Our next speaker is former Mayor Jennifer Roberts. Miss Roberts. And then she'll be followed by Clean Air Carolina, I think Clean Air NC, June Blocknick, who is, I believe, retiring soon, but we won't think about that. We're just going to keep her active as she keeps going through this. Both of them are virtual. Ms. Roberts?
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and friends. I'm Jennifer Roberts, former mayor, former county commissioner, resident of Charlotte for more decades than I care to reveal. And I just have two comments about the budget. But first, I want to say the young people and their voices about sustainability and the future are so moving, I can hardly add to what they said, but I'm going to add anyway. As a member of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Climate Leaders, I've taken a close look at the progress to a zero-carbon future. And I want to say, great to see a purchase of an electric fire truck and a zero-carbon fire station. That's fabulous. 55 new electric vehicles is a good start. I wish there were more than one police car. I want to recognize police cars are visible, would set a good example, and they spend a lot of time in many neighborhoods that need cleaner air. Neighborhoods near highways and polluting factories due to redlining, neighborhoods where asthma rates can be 2 to 3 times higher than in wealthy neighborhoods. Across America, the statistic is that Black children are 4 times as likely to die from asthma as white children. So it'd be great to keep the health of our Black and brown communities in mind when you allocate where those EVs are going, where they're going to be operating, where that green infrastructure is going. One other item I want to emphasize was mentioned several times, and that is workforce development. ICAST is a terrific program that helps train workers for green retrofitting, which lowers utility costs. They work in multifamily residences. They've got experience in 4 different states. They are proven. I ran across them when I was working with Eco America. They have a terrific record, and apparently their application was stalled for some reason, but please take a look at them. ICAST, that's ICAST. And Charlotte will be a great opportunity. They're trying to break into the North Carolina market. That's all I want to say. The voice of the young people were incredibly powerful. I hope you listened. Thanks for all the hard work on the budget. Great to see all my friends again. Take care.
Thank you. All right, and our next speaker is June Blocknick. June?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can certainly hear you.
Okay, great.
And
For some reason,
congratulations on a great career and the work that you've done to help us get this far. We're still working on it, I know, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you all too, and thank you for this opportunity to hear us tonight. So I am June Blocknick, the Executive Director of Clean Air NC, and we have worked closely with the city since 2018 to create and pass the Sustainable and Resilient Charlotte by 2050 resolution, and we were also part of the stakeholder process to get the Strategic Energy Action Plan passed. Clean Air NC also supports the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Climate Leaders, which works closely with the city's sustainability office to help it meet its goals. I only have a couple points I want to make. One is thank you for doubling the 2020 bond totals for the bike program from $4 to $8 million to reduce carbon emissions and other air pollution from the transportation sector. We need to expand the bike program, and I think the city has been doing a great job over the years to do that. So thank you for that. Thank you for your commitment to electric buses. starting with the 18 electric bus pilot project. We know that more funding will be needed for this area, but we appreciate that. The second thing is I just wanted to speak to the corridors of opportunity line item. And we know that with the climate crisis, these residents will bear the brunt of the health impacts, especially from extreme heat and extreme weather. So I'm not sure what the 10 million earmarked for the corridors of opportunity goes to, but we'd love to see another major commitment like $10 million to address climate resiliency needs. Funds are needed to increase energy efficiency and add air conditioning to the housing stock to protect older adults, young children, and those suffering from chronic illnesses.
June, thank you. Your time is up. If you could send us that, we'll have it entered into the clerk's office. We'll have it entered into our record. Thank you so much.
I sure will. Thank you.
All right. Our next in-person speaker is John Harvey, and he will be followed by Ron Ross, who will be virtual. Mr. Harvey, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Harvey, and I'm a resident of East Charlotte, and I also work with all of the organizations and people that you've heard from tonight. First, I want to thank the mayor, the city manager, and the city council for allowing the time and space for the public to come and address issues. What I want to address tonight is the budget for 2023, lacking funding and transparency for the Strategic Energy Action Plan. This is frightening as scientists and experts are screaming code red because we're not reaching our goals to combat climate change and reduce emissions. With the absence of federal and sometimes state governments, our local leaders are essential to tackling environmental concerns and climate change. In 2018, the City Council unanimously passed the CAP, or the Strategic Energy Action Plan. This was a significant achievement, so I want to say thank you all for doing that. The proposed budget for 2023 does not reflect the urgency for making rapid transitions within the next few years to mitigate the future impacts of climate change. Definitive estimates on needs are not publicly available for 2030 goals that regards building fleets and operations, and for 2050 regarding engagement with the whole community. I, along with my friends, family, colleagues, and community, ask that the CAP is funded to meet our goals of having our city fleet and facilities fueled by 100% zero carbon sources by 2030, and our community-wide goals for Charlotte to become a low-carbon city by 2050. It is time to act now. The buses and electric stations are essential, and we are happy for them, but we must go further and tackle environmental justice. Too often, the communities affected are not a part of the solution. Let's change that. Equity and transparency in the CAP can ensure we leave our kids a beautiful, safe place to live. Acting now, funding the CAP is the right thing to do for our city and our planet. This is a code red emergency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker is virtual. Mr. Ross? Ms. Jackson? Mr. Ross, I think, we don't have him yet to be on virtual. I want to thank everyone that came out to speak today on our public hearing on the budget.
There's
yes.
an additional person.
There's an additional person.
Sam Spencer.
No, Mr. Spencer is not speaking. It's Ms. Carter, our former council member, Nancy Carter, who's now has volunteered in so many ways, actually went out and volunteered after being a council member, then ran for office again as a soil and water conservation member. So come on down. All right. Sorry, I missed you. You know, could I say something? Velva Woolen, who was one of the very first women to serve on the city council, she lost her husband this week, Tommy. And I just wanted to make sure we all knew that. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your vote for CAP. Thank you for taking action. We just need more. I'm delighted about the electric fire station, about the electric fire truck, about 50 charging positions for the public. You all are doing a fantastic job. CATS has appointed the first Resiliency, Sustainability, and Government Affairs official. Wouldn't other departments benefit from somebody like that? Something to consider. I'm delighted that there will be EV-ready projects for new and qualifying renovation projects. Would that be both city and private? I hope the answer is yes, because that's one way we can really move the needle. I'd ask city council members and staff to help our residents understand what they can do to help move CAP forward. I think that's one missing piece. I like your advocacy. And I'm specifically grateful to you for CAP because Nick and I are really invested in the future. We have a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old granddaughter each. So please help us create the world that they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So as I was saying, I'm really glad that you've taken the time to give us things to think about. We all wish that we could accomplish more of these. I hope that not only will you come and continue to focus and help us do better, but we need this. You know, clean air and clean water knows no boundaries on a map. You know, it's really a state and federal issue that we've all got to support. And I really appreciate you helping us continue your advocacy and help us do better. This year's budget, I think Mr. Tolliver said you couldn't find it, but I think Mr. Jones told me it's over $65 million in this year's budget around the CAP program. Now, it's all different places, we understand that, but we often need to remind ourselves that we're trying to do this in a way that informs you better, so we'll continue to work on how we send it out. But $65 million of this investment is supported by the CAP. And so thank you very much. That is the conclusion of, do we need a motion to close the public hearing, Mr. Attorney?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion to open and close, a motion to close the public hearing. I think because we still are in the mode of, we'll have a vote, roll call vote. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston? Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Winston, Mr. Bakari? Mr. Driggs? Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, but can I say something? We didn't have a discussion.
Can I'm going to go ahead and finish the roll call vote.
I wanted to say before they left, we didn't have a discussion. We had a discussion on the CAP. Okay, I just want to say something to them, because we've already answered one of their issues. We had an issue, Nancy. Well,
Do we
anyway,
have responses to public hearings?
Our CAP group had a discussion, and we asked Sarah Hazel, and the city's already answered that call. And we asked for the public to be educated on what the public can do to help move the CAP goals forward. So there is something, we had a discussion about that, and there's something on our webpage about everyday task force, so we'll make sure we get that out.
Okay.
So yes.
All right, thank you. So we're still in the vote.
I
Ms.
said
Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
All right, that closes the public hearing. We now have 10 public hearings. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers for, I'm sorry, I think 9 remaining public hearings. Do we have any speakers signed up for any of the public hearings that are remaining? All right, so we still have a sufficient number to vote. So we're going to vote now on,
You know, bash these up.
Item 9, public hearing on a decision on the enclave of Fair Hill Pond Area Voluntary Annexation. We have no speakers, so do I have a motion to open and close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Phipps on the motion? Mr. Winston? Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs? Mr. Eggles? Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira? Yes. All right. The next item is item 10, a public hearing and a decision on the Winsford area voluntary annexation. Do I have a motion to open and close the public? Thank you. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston? Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira? Yes. Thank you. Item number 11, a public hearing to close, on a resolution to close a portion of alleyways off Chamberlain Avenue.
Moved open and closed.
Thank you very much.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston? Mr. Bakari? Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira? Yes. Have a motion to open and close the public hearing on a resolution for a portion of an alleyway between Fountain View and Garden Terrace and a
open and
portion
close.
of the alleyway off Scott Avenue.
Moved open and closed.
All right, we have a motion to open and close. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
We have item 13, open and close a public hearing on the resolution to close, the Fountain View and Garden Terrace. Is that a duplication?
Moved open and closed.
Oh, open to close. We have a
Second.
motion to open and to close the public hearing on item 13. So with that, any discussion? Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
All right. Do we have a motion to open and close the public hearing on a resolution to close Memorial Place and an alleyway off Memorial Place?
Moved open and closed.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Aye.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Item 15, do we have a motion to open and close the public hearing on a resolution to close Mineral Springs Road at North US 29 bypass?
Oh, moved open and closed.
All right, and do we have a
Second.
second? All right, any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
We have item 16, to conduct open and close a public hearing on a resolution to close unopened Maplewood Road off West Mallard Creek Church Road.
Moved open and closed.
We have a motion to open and to close the public
Second.
hearing. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Aye.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Item 17, move to open and close a public hearing for unopened right-of-way off Liggett Street, a portion of unopened right-of-way on Haywood Avenue, and a portion of the alleyway off Allegheny Street.
Moved open and closed.
We have a motion to open and to close. Any
Second.
discussion?
Second.
All right, Mr. Phipps.
Yes.
Mr. Winston.
Yes.
Mr. Bakari.
Yes.
Mr. Driggs.
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Newton.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira.
Yes.
All right, the next item on our agenda is item number 19. It is the 7th and North Tryon Infrastructure Reimbursement Agreement, authorizing the manager to negotiate and execute an infrastructure reimbursement agreement with BP Metropolitan NCLCC in an amount not to exceed $24,448,000 for public infrastructure and public parking, which are expected to be reimbursed through a 45% incremental city and county property taxes from a designated area area over 15 years or until fully reimbursed, whichever occurs first, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the infrastructure reimbursement agreement with the company in an amount not to exceed $3 million for public infrastructure improvements, which is expected to be reimbursed at a future bond referendum, and adopt a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Mecklenburg County for the 7th and North Tryon Infrastructure Reimbursement Agreement. Do I have a motion to approve item A, B, and C?
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Driggs.
So looking at this, I've been comparing it to the 2020 deal for which I advocated, and it's evolved a lot. We've had conversations about how, but I question in particular the parking provisions in the current deal because they're no longer below ground, they're above ground, and the number of parking spaces seems to have changed. During prior conversations, I received assurances that there wasn't actually a significant change in the number of parking spaces because some of them were associated with the residential building. And then today, there was a message, a clarification sent around that said, in fact, the number of parking spaces was down from 1,400 to 800, and that it was not right to invoke the residential parking spaces in order to offset that. So basically, we had a 20% decline in the size of the building, 500,000 to 400,000 feet, and because we're not allocating 4 spaces per, I guess, 1,000 square feet, the number of parking spaces has gone down. Now, since that was the principal kind of not justification necessarily, but that was the principal use that was originally intended for this number, which is about the same number that we originally talked about, I would really appreciate a clarification on where we are in the parking spaces.
We're going to ask Ms. Estrich from Economic Development to come down and speak to that question.
Thank you very much. Good evening. So you are correct. There was the developer did send a clarification based on what they had originally expressed to us. That's what let me back up. So on April 11th, we presented to you a comparison of 2020 to 2022. And in that, we talked about there originally was 1,489 spaces. Those were above and below grade in 2020. In 2022, there were 810 spaces. That's what they were proposing. That's what we presented to you all. And at that meeting, we said the reason that we were given for that reduction was the reduction in office square footage, and also that multifamily was now going to provide their own parking. After talking to the developer, they did additional research on this project and went back into the history, into the notes, and they found they were incorrect. Metropolitan was incorrect in stating that the reduction was due to the multifamily. Multifamily was always going to pay for its own spots. What they did find is that actually in 2020, the office building, we originally said it was 450,000 square feet. They said actually in 2020, the office building was 500,000 square feet. The office building has been reduced to 400,000 square feet. So that is part of the parking reduction. In 2020, there was a tenant for the property that was going to require 4 spaces for every 1,000 square feet. Now the requirement has been reduced to 2 spaces for every 1,000 square feet. And so that actually accounts for that reduction between the numbers in 2020 to 2022.
All right, that's what I understood. But what I'm not sure I'm on board with is the fact that our 24.4 million is the same. So did we not regard that as a reason to just kind of revisit the economics of our participation in the transaction?
So what we had talked about previously with you all is that really, the parking was removed from below grade because what they found is the site, in order for the site to be able to have that shared service level, so where all the trucks unload, the different concerts, performances, et cetera, to do that above ground would actually disrupt the public plaza. And so they moved that below grade. And so when they moved that below grade, which some of the TIG funding will go towards that cost, that then did not allow for the space to be able to accommodate the public parking underground.
So when we first talked about the parking, wasn't the intention that there was going to be some parking spaces available to the public? Because the way this is described right now, there's 2 for the tenant instead of 4. And then there was prospective tenants, and they were allocated 2, and that's the number. So wasn't there originally an intention that we would also create public parking capacity, and that was one of the reasons that we felt we should invest?
Yes, sir. Actually, that number of public parking spaces has gone up. In 2020, it was estimated between 150 and 200, and now it's at 250 public spaces. So there are public spaces in the deck associated with the theater, the library.
That was not in the memo that circulated this morning, I think, because there it said you had existing tenant X times 2, and you had prospective tenants, and that was your 800. So where are those spaces?
So those spaces are, so I have to do math here, but anyway, so the 810 less the 250, right? So whatever that balance is, I'm sorry, I'm really bad at doing math on the fly like this, that is for the private tenants. Those spaces are for the private tenants. So what is that?
But not public parking, not for people from the public. Wasn't the intention that there would actually be some capacity for public parking as part of this?
Yes, so there's 810 spaces total in the deck. 560 of those will be for the private sector, whoever the private tenants are. 250 will be public.
So those numbers 2 times such and such plus the existing add up to 510. Is that it?
No, I think what they're saying is that when they're looking at the complex, I understand what you're saying. I would say on that, they're pulling the 810 spaces off of the office tower. You are correct about that. But they are saying still that 250 of those will be public.
I'm remembering that in 2020, we've had to kind of evolve over a lot of time, and this number has stayed the same. And frankly, most of the changes, we no longer do we have affordable housing on site. And I think it's all driven by how the economics of the deal have evolved from the developer's standpoint, but our number hasn't changed. And so I'm not sure I have a high level of confidence that this 24 million is the right number, even though I do believe that this is in the public interest. And that's where I'm kind of hung up right now. Thank you.
Mr. Eggleston?
I'm generally supportive of this as well, but I do appreciate Mr. Driggs trying to unpack this, and one of the things that it brings to mind for me, well, 2 things. One would be, I guess, maybe further clarification on those parking numbers contemplate that maybe there's a need for some of the spaces during the day, but not in the evening, and that's when we anticipate the public need would be. So is there overlapping use on those spaces as opposed to them being maybe dedicated for public use around the clock? But the other would be, if you take a below-grade parking structure, bring it above grade, I assume that the project cost is reduced fairly significantly. So I don't know do we know what the difference in terms of the investment of the development, the total investment in the development is from the original plan to the lower square footage, lower parking total, and that parking becoming above grade? Do we know what the difference is in that investment?
So in 2020, the private investment was 600 million, and in 2022, it's also 600 million. Where it gets to be more expensive is that shared, below-grade shared space. It's actually more expensive to build that, from what I'm understanding, than the actual parking structure itself. Just because you have to have such a large turn radius for the vehicles, the height has to be higher. And so really, that shared space underground makes the public plaza accessible, right? And that we can actually have one on the site. It'll be about 23,100 square feet, I think, the public plaza will be. And then, yes, so that's where we are.
So it's not that costs have risen. I mean, I'm sure some of it is, but it's not so much that costs have risen over time. It's literally what they want to build now still is just as expensive. There's not actually a real significant savings in that those changes to the project.
Correct, yes.
So, because I think that was one of the things that what your questioning called to mind for me was, does it change the amount of return on investment in the dollars that we're putting in terms of the amount of total investment in the project?
If it was $600 million 2 years ago and it's still $600 million now, you can bet that a lot of content has gone away. The inflation has been notorious. And that's kind of my point, is we are seeing a dilution, in effect, of that $600 million investment. And I would have just hoped to see a little more of an adjustment in our contribution.
So we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Bakari? And Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson was next, and then Mr. Bakari. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I was just going to say that we looked at 7th and Tryon and discussed it a lot. We had several meetings. So if there's a comparison or something's changed, I think that we, along with the public, deserve maybe to see that in the same type of presentation. So I would make the motion that we defer this until we get additional information, and maybe see those comparisons and maybe get the questions answered before we move forward in approving.
It's a substitute motion, right?
Yes.
Is there a second to the
I'll second that.
substitute? Mr. Driggs or Mr. Driggs second that motion?
How much, like how are we putting it?
Until when?
The motion was to
He wants to
defer.
know, yeah.
So our next meeting is the 31st. I don't know what the impact it is for between the 9th and the 31st.
I mean, it's just $24 million, and I think the public deserves, if there's a change in the plan, I mean, we had enough pushback that we were paying $24 million for parking. So we have to recall that, and I think we owe the public the answers. If we're unclear and numbers are flying around and there's ambiguity, I think that a clear presentation would be the proper thing to do as far as stewardship.
So, Ms. Johnson,
Ms.
your motion needs to be clear about what you intend.
Mr. Driggs, Mr. Bakari was next.
Just clarify that.
I'm predisposed to want to do the delay with this, but Mr. Jones, I just want to ask, is this going to hurt anything? I mean, we've had tons of conversation on this, and I feel like we've entered a period where we have like 700 competing priorities, a budget, 15 other things to list, and I feel like it's kind of gotten maybe this last step a little bit lost in all the noise of everything we've been doing, where another quick round of conversations to just do these benchmarks and get them answered, is that going to put anything in jeopardy if we don't do that?
I'll double check with Holly. Holly, if we went to the 31st, would we still be fine?
We'll be fine. We can wait till 31st.
Because clearly, there's a lot of work in this, and we want to be supportive, but there's some big questions that it would just be really helpful to have that. So I agree. I would support that as well.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to defer until the 31st. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. All right, the next item on our agenda is 20. Item 20, the acquisition of property on West Boulevard to approve the purchase of 2 parcels located at 1527, 1533 West Boulevard in the amount of $1.2 million from West Boulevard Shop, and authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute documents necessary to complete the purchase.
Motion to approve and authorize.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, please.
All right, Ms. Watlington.
I just want to say thank you to, first of all, the residents of West Boulevard, the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition, CMPD's NEST team, staff, and our partners, obviously, at the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as our City Attorney's Office. This has been one that's been years in the making, and also one of the key things that we wanted to do coming into this existing term as part of our West Boulevard Corridor Playbook. And so this one is a big win for our residents, and we're looking forward to what we're going to do at West and Remount. It is one of our major intersections and gateway to Uptown, and so we're really excited to see what we can do at this prime location in the way of investing in our corridors.
All right. Any further comment or discussion? Mr. Graham?
Just wanted to add that these are corridors of opportunity funds as well, and so I think the public needs to know that we are actualizing what we said we were going to do, which is finding ways to impact corridors and communities. So I want to thank Councilmember Wallington for her leadership.
All right. So, this is Mr. Phipps? A question. Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, do we have any other properties similar to this nuisance property in the pipeline for other areas?
I'm getting some complaints about your house, Mr. Phipps.
Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor. Lori Lincheski with the Economic Development Department. At this time, are you asking about additional properties at federal forfeiture process?
Right, yeah, any similar properties in the pipeline to this that would get that kind of attention?
I got a couple more if you want.
At this time, we do not have additional properties that have federal interest in them.
Do we have a relationship with the U.S. Attorney's Office to have that kind of conversation? So as long as we keep talking to them and they're moving along, we'll try to keep up with them?
Yes, and CMPD, we've also been in conversation with them as well.
All right, thank you. All right, no further discussion. We'll have our vote. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Aye.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
All right. The next item is adopt a resolution supporting the North Carolina Department of Transportation Safety Project, adopting a resolution supporting safety project on South Boulevard at Sharon Lakes Road to improve traffic safety in support of the Vision Zero Action
Motion to
Plan.
adopt.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll start our vote. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Next item is to authorize the city manager to execute a developer agreement with TGACSE Central Square for traffic signal installation and improvements and adopt a budget ordinance for a total of $771,000 in private development funds for traffic signal installations and improvements to the General Capital Projects Fund.
Motion to authorize and adopt.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yeah.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Next item, adopt a resolution authorizing the manager to execute a retail lease agreement with Ivy Rehab at the University NC, operating as Ivy Rehab for the lease of approximately 2,600 square feet in the J.W. Clay parking deck for a 10-year term with extension options, and authorizing the manager to negotiate and execute the documents necessary for this to be completed. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt and authorize.
Second.
We have a motion to adopt and a second. Ms. Johnson?
I just wanted to ask about this property and the lease. I've been approached by several interested parties that have looked at this space, so I wanted to understand the city leasing process. And you know, when it's determined, I know some nonprofits in the city lease space, city space, for as little as, or close to nothing, or little as $1. So I want to know, how does this work, or how are organizations chosen or rent is established in city-owned buildings?
So is this one that you want to ask the manager for
Yeah, the
all
mayor.
of the city policy.
Yeah, the
It's not,
policy.
Mr. Lewis was going to
Okay.
address parking at the parking deck, but I thought your question was bigger than the parking
Well,
deck.
we can start, well, the city policy would be great, but this building specifically, I've had organizations look at. So I wanted to know what the policy is in the selection process.
Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Johnson. For the record, John Lewis, Executive Director of the Charlotte Area Transit System. In regard to these parking decks, which we have set aside space for retail activity, because these decks were constructed with federal funding, there is a set of federal criteria which we must follow in regard to leasing this space. And so specific to your question about leasing city-owned space for $1 or less consideration, we are bound by this federal policy that we have to get market value for that property.
Okay, so market value for all of the spaces in all of the garages?
In all of the garages, which we have retail space. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And so as far as city-owned buildings, how does that translate or transfer?
You're right. So, Councilmember Johnson, what I don't see Phil in, so what we can do is just have
Okay.
Phil Rieger in your Thursday packet, put something in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, John, this is one of this item I have a pending research on, but I wanted to know, the federal guidelines, are they such a barrier that it has caused a slowness in absorption of retail space at those decks to be so protracted? I mean, it's been, I don't know. How long has this Blue Line been open?
Spring of
it's like,
2018.
I don't think we have any activation at University City parking deck. We only have about a couple at the J.W. Clay. So the requirements, the criteria are so onerous at the federal level as to keep those spaces dark, or what?
No, I don't think that it is the federal requirements that are becoming a challenge. I think it's just the design of the space. And parking decks, particularly in suburban parking decks, really isn't conducive for many activities because of the setback from the road, and they tend to be further away from activity. That they're so dependent upon the numbers of vehicles that transit in and out of the space. And at the end of the day, quite frankly, from a commuting standpoint, people are getting off the train, getting in their cars and going home. And so that, I believe, it is just nationwide very difficult to activate transit parking garages into retail space.
Ms. Johnson?
I've had 2 organizations approach me with interest. So are we saying we have vacant space in these parking garages? Is it something, and we could talk about this during a strategy session, then maybe that would be an opportunity for co-working space or something that we could give back to the community if we have empty, wonderful office space, and then the city could absorb the market rate rent. But there are organizations that need space, and I think that this is an opportunity for us, if we've had vacant office space since 2018, to possibly do some type of co-working space for nonprofit organizations. Near the train, when you talk about upward mobility, I mean, this is a possible solution.
To Ms. Johnson's point, if it's fair market value and nobody's leasing it, it can't be that expensive to activate. You've got to bring, it means that it's sitting there unutilized. So I wonder how the fair market value calculation is made. Ms. Johnson's point, if nobody's using it, well, what value does it have? And so just a thought to her point. I don't know.
And
how this
very
works.
good question. I think I'd like to get back to council on the exact requirements and the determination of fair market value in that. I think it is greater than just the space available in that facility, but let me provide that in more detail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If we can get a list of vacant office spaces in the garages. I know we have an outstanding request for city-owned property, but if we could designate which are in the garage, that would be great.
And I would just clarify, this is not office space. It is a shell of retail area that is
Okay.
built out for.
Okay, that's great, too. Okay, thanks.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. So, Mr. Phipps, if
Yes.
there's no further discussion, Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham? Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember Esmira?
Yes.
All right. Okay, now, we have the nominations to various boards and commissions. You submitted your nominations earlier. Tomorrow, the clerk will send you the information, and the candidates will be considered. I think that we had a request, Mr. Driggs, did we talk about deferral on
Deferral on the arts appointment for District 7?
for the arts appointment on District 7, as, what about the privatization and competition
And the
deferral?
PCAC, yeah.
PCAC. So, you have people submitted nominations for it already?
They have.
So we would like to have the time to, these would come back when?
May 31st, I believe.
So we have some time, we'll have to figure that out, but we'll get there. Okay. All right, so, Madam Clerk, I turn this over to you.
For the Alternative Compliance Review Committee, the incumbent Mary Kelly received 9 nominations, and before I read the remaining names, there are multiple incumbents and individuals that received more than 6 nominations. So at the conclusion, you could make a motion and a second and vote to appoint these individuals if you so choose.
Great.
So Mary Kelly received 9 nominations, and she is the incumbent for the community representative on the Alternative Compliance Review Committee. There are 2 appointments for the Real Estate Development Industry Representative for the same committee. The incumbents, Tobe Holmes and Michael Paul James, both incumbents, received 11 nominations. The Arts and Science Council Committee is deferred. For the Business Advisory Committee, there are no recommendations that have been submitted, so we will hold that over to the 31st. For the Charlotte Business Inclusion Advisory Committee, Rebecca LeClaire received 10 nominations. For the Charlotte International Cabinet, Nikita Matal, the incumbent, received 8 nominations. For the, as of being reappointed, for the recommendation from the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority, the incumbent Aaron Rose received 9 nominations. For the 2 appointments from the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, the incumbents Akofa Dasu and Hans Hilgenstock received 9 nominations each. For the Education Nonprofit Category Representative, Maggie Cummins, the incumbent, received 9 nominations. For the International Business Category Representative, Vanessa Matthews, the incumbent, received 10 nominations. For the Charlotte Mecklenburg Public Access Corporation, there were 3 vacancies, and 2 of those you may consider tonight. And the incumbent Nicole Arnold received 10 nominations, as did Jamal Harvey. The other vacancy will bring back to you on the 31st. For the Civil Service Board,
Crystal Screen received 9 nominations. For the Domestic Violence Advisory Board, the Vimalal Nathan Thiagara received 9 nominations. And for the Neighborhood Matching Grants, the Philip Guzman received 10 nominations. For the Passenger Vehicle for Hire, Alvin Stennett, the incumbent, received 10 nominations. And it's my understanding you wish to hold the privatization until the 31st.
Motion to appoint all nominees receiving 6 or more nominations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve those nominations. Any discussion on any one of them?
Yeah, I have a question.
All right.
Did
Mrs. Johnson?
Thank you. Did either of the committees that we're deferring receive 6 votes?
The Privatization Competition Advisory, the incumbent received 11 nominations.
So, I mean, we didn't have a motion to defer that one. Why are we deferring that if we have someone that has 11 votes?
Mr. Driggs or I could say they have sent us a letter. The Privatization and Competition Committee was very, very active when we were looking at how to restructure a lot of the governmental functions. And in the past, where their letter basically said, we feel like we need to have more purpose, and it's not the purpose that the original intent of the committee was. And so Mr. Driggs, who has worked closely with them, has been looking at what options there might be to make use of really good talent for something that no longer is current.
Weren't we reappointing someone who was already on it, though?
Yes, but I think that Mr.
It's an extension that had to be done at the discretion of the mayor because he was past his normal limit. But I've had discussions with them about their activity. And they would like to basically have their mission kind of redefined because they find that where they are right now is not leading to productive activity. So we're in the midst of that discussion. The question is not about the individual, it's about the committee. And that individual has actually brought up the subject of the need to clarify the mission of the committee. So we'd just like to spend another week or so reaching a conclusion about that and before deciding on any other action.
I just ask that we be sensitive also in that next conversation of this individual's service to the committee the whole time, if we all voted for them. I don't know what's exactly going on, but
Again, it's not a question about the individual, it's just a question initiated by the individual about the purpose and future of the committee, and we want to be sure that we have resolved that.
They continue to serve until we figure this out,
Right.
and they brought up the question.
it's just odd that, holding up a reappointment
I agree.
doesn't make a lot of sense when, in relation to, we can do that whenever. It doesn't mean, it's fine. I feel like I'm missing some detail, and it's fine, we'll pause on
I
it.
think we sent the letter was sent out maybe a week or so ago, or 2 weeks ago, somewhere.
I'll follow up offline.
All right, so
Motion and a second.
we have a motion and a second. Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham? Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Ms. James, I do believe we'd already have the motion approved for the closed session that we're going into. So we'll go into the room behind
us
us
to
for
make
the
a
closed
motion?
session.
Move to go back into.
Move it to go back into
Go
closed
back into
session.
closed session.
Second.
And we have a second. Any further discussion? All right. So approving to go back into closed session, Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yeah.
Mr. Driggs?
Sure.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham? Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
I would like to have the public know that at the end of our closed session, we will not return to an open session. So thank you for watching us tonight, and we will reconvene in 5 minutes in the room behind us.